How we doing, Mike?
Doing great, Frank. How we doing?
Doing fabulous.
Good. Good to be back.
It is. It's been a couple of weeks. So
It has been a couple of weeks. It's nice to jump back in these chairs.
So for those you listening in, me and Mike took off a couple of weeks.
We have, and we are back, and we are ready to dive into a very special guest today.
Yeah.
Who are we covering today, Frank?
Neale Donald Walsch. I'm surprised we haven't covered him sooner because we've been doing this since 2020. So
classic.
Yeah. He's. I remember when his book first came out.
Did you read it when it first came out?
Or? Not when it first came out, probably a couple of years after, but I definitely read it in the late 90s, you know?
See, that's cool.
And then...
I was telling Kayla about Neale Donald Walsch today, and I was saying, this guy's been around, you know?
Yeah, because when I first started reading these types of books, when you went to the Barnes & Noble, there wasn't that big of a section.
Yeah, it
really
still
wasn't.
To this day, you've got like one block row.
Well, now that it's, obviously I don't go to the, bookstore as much, but like on Amazon, so there's a lot more authors in this field than there were back then. And it's, it's only, you're talking about 20 years, like, it's 2024. So yeah. So like 19 years of how many authors came up. But this book was really interesting because it was a depiction of him getting into a state and asking questions and getting answers back from God, or what some would think of as higher consciousness, or however you look at it. Yeah.
Yep.
So it wasn't his mind coming up with the answers. It was his mind asking the answers, and then the answers would come back in a higher level. Mm-hmm. So it's a really interesting book. I love what they did with the audio part of it. Could they have... so when they're reading it, he'll be asking the questions, and then he has an actor at Asner, I think, and I forgot what the woman's name. Mm-hmm. So he uses both male and female voice as God, and it's pretty cool. So you can check those out.
One of the clips we've got today kind of highlights that.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
And I noticed that in the comment section too. People were making comments about that.
Yeah, I'm sure people, because most people think of God as him or whatever. But
correct.
God is really non-gender. Well, it's this energy.
Yep.
So, or how you look at it, like how you relate to it, and you know what? At some level, there is no right or wrong way to relate to God, because, but as time goes on, just like you relate to a friend, over the years you start relating differently. Yeah. So it's this natural progression. I think a lot of the issues we get into the field, and I think you have a video about which one, the controversial author.
Oh yeah, which is great.
I haven't heard that one, so I'm curious. Clip. Yeah, so it's kind of like how it's presented, but when you start looking at there's different levels of understanding things. Just like the higher you climb up a building, look out the window, the city looks different. Yep. But one isn't better. One may be a greater level as some sort, but it's not necessarily better. And so when we're explaining this stuff, it is different levels, maybe levels that you may have never heard of, or maybe you'll be familiar with it. So take that into consideration. And he actually presents that.
He does.
He doesn't just say, this is how it is.
No, he does a great job of it.
Yeah, because especially the answers from God, and God will put it that way. Well, how do you see God?
Well, and what's cool too is he doesn't say that he's channeling any entity or channeling God or anything, but he describes it as a conversation that all of us are able to have, and that's what's cool is he references God as the higher self, and we all have the capacity, we all have the ability to have these conversations. It's just we've got to get out of the way, get out of our own way in order to have them.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, there's really not much you have to do, because if I recall, it wasn't like he was doing a meditation to fall into it. He woke up in the middle of the night one night, completely and utterly frustrated about life, and then he just grabbed a yellow legal pad and started writing. So there's no work to be done. I think you just get to this point where you're just done, and from that he slipped into a state of like higher love, and that's the information. So when you're in a state of higher love, there's absolutely no judgment. Now, I believe everyone does that periodically. They may miss it, they may not know it, but I think there's these moments when your heart just opens up and there's no judgment, and but it might only last you like 3 minutes in a week, but yet you know what it feels like. It's completely it's free. So the information and how you feel and thoughts that come in or ideas that come in are pure. But then what happens is the thinking mind comes in and evaluates them and says,
Begins to
that will never
rationalize,
work.
justify,
Yeah.
Point out. Yep.
So if you can refrain from that and actually understand when that happens, because I speak to a lot of people and they're like, I never had an experience like that. And I laugh. I'm like, yes, you have. You just haven't recognized it. We all have. I could take you back to your childhood. I could take you back to a moment when you just noticed the sun and you just felt good. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, your heart completely opened up. But there is a way to directly go there.
Well, and those just listening in on this, try to think back of every person listening to this recording right now has experienced some sort of miracle in their life. We all have, everyone. We've all experienced miracles, whether that's through a family member, a friend, somebody in school, whatever.
Have my wife not kick me out of the house.
That's definitely a miracle. It's definitely a miracle. But we've all had these truly miracle experiences, and then that they're great for a moment. We're scratching our heads. How could this have happened? And then conditioning comes into play. We fall back into the rut of life, and we forget. And we simply write it off as, I got lucky that one day, as if, this isn't a state that you can achieve. This isn't a frequency, a level of consciousness that is out there. And it is.
And it is. The thing is, you can't sustain it because, think about this. If you just know anything about history, just go back, to 2000. Or let's go back to 95 when this book was written. Okay. There were no cell phones readily available. There were, but they weren't. Mm-hmm. So then let's fast forward 20 years later, we have the iPhone or, Android phone. It doesn't matter what it is. You have a little mini computer walking around. That is a miracle. Mm-hmm. But what happens is when a miracle happens, we then live it, and then we put it in the back burner as mundane. Yeah. So it's a miracle that we can get across this country in an airplane in roughly 5 hours going from coast to coast. Where years ago, if you're on a chuck wagon, it took you 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that was a good trip. It might have taken you maybe 5 months, depending on what you ran into.
But that's a great example. If we told people the way we live now, 50 years ago, they would say, what? Mm-hmm. Truly miraculous.
Yeah. So it's about recognizing the continuous shifting in what we call miracles. It was only around close to 1900 when they started experimenting on certain surgeries. Mm-hmm. Now it's like heart surgery. It's if someone needs heart transplant, it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. That would be considered a miracle. So we're just getting used to miracles. Not that we can't stay in that state. It's always going higher. But once we deem something happens, we want to actually, to use reference of a wagon, we want to actually plant our homestead right here. But expansion is continuously; it doesn't end, and that's what it is when someone notices something like, okay, this is it. I'm like, this is it for this moment, mm-hmm. and the next moment will always bring you stuff. That's why it feels like an up and down type situation in life. I'm like, no, it's continuously expanding. So you can't even hold on to that moment, but briefly enjoy it. That's a gift from God.
Well, I think it's funny as these miracles come in, and as we attempt to figure them out, and is when we write them off. Uh-huh. We're like, oh, that only happened because of this, and well, what it took for this reality to have those circumstances exactly like that.
Oh my God! Yeah.
That's the miracle.
Yeah.
And we. As a Western society and a scientific community, we dissect everything and we reverse engineer it and we figure it out, and then it's no longer a miracle. When in reality, we're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think that part of going about it the wrong way is letting us let go to actually just allow it. Mm-hmm. So it's part and parcel of the whole experience and how I look at it. And there's multitudes of ways of looking at it. But that's where a lot of my humor comes in from, if you actually watch a 3-year-old trying to put something together, you wouldn't get upset. You'd probably sit back and just let's see if they can figure it out.
Totally.
Because you obviously know how it goes. But then you realize, I'm like, is the 3-year-old trying to put this together or they're just being curious? And so all of a sudden, it's like, it's interesting because you think this is the form it has to work in. They have to put this together with that together, where the kid's just like, oh, this just feels interesting. Okay, what's going to happen if I do this? They're not trying to put anything together. They're just having this experience without any outcome. Why? Because their memory isn't that strong in the physical world to have any outcome of a memory, how it ought to be. And I believe that's what the words from Jesus said, become childlike again. Like, listen, yeah, you have a lot of experiences in memory, but why are you correlating it with this moment now? That's what messes this moment up, is comparing it to a previous moment. Yeah. And as we learn to let go of the previous moment, this moment becomes spectacular, even if it seems to be mundane in its, essence of how we look at things,
It's funny that you bring that up because, like, especially a lot recently, my girlfriend Kayla has 2 kids, and so they're one is about to turn 11, and the other just turned 9. But I watch, like, as they do certain tasks and like do things, and I'm interacting with them, and I know, like, the way I was brought up, and you're told, like, oh, this is how it's done, and this, and I kind of step back and I allow and watch how they put things together or try different things. And it amazes me because it's like we take so much from a person when we say, this is the way, this is how it's done, etc. And it's like, whoa, what do you mean? That, there's infinite ways I can go about this or create this or draw that or build this. And so it's like, I don't know, I consciously try to remind myself, like, hey, I don't need to condition them the same way I was conditioned.
Yeah, but no, you probably weren't as conditioned as much as they are because you were left to your own devices more than the kids are today.
As far as, like, screens and stuff like that goes?
Not just screens. Like, we went and played baseball. Like, it didn't get serious till Little League started. But prior to that, we were just playing. There was no one telling us I'm swinging the bat wrong, There was no one doing that. Now, today, kids are at 5 years old with a coach. Yeah. You're doing that wrong. So now the kids have just learned to obey the instructions. So now it's like we have to create a space where, yeah, my parents would show me things to do, but that was like 1% of the time. The rest of the time, no one taught me how to climb a tree. I just climbed it. Yeah. No one showed me how to build a fort. Me and my friend just learned how to build a fort. All these activities we did, we learned on our own. And yeah, we were in school and they were teaching us how to do stuff. But even during recess, it's like we were doing our own thing, But now it's like it seems like a lot of bombardment of how to do things are onto children. Yeah. But even then, they find these moments where they break away from it. Like,
they totally do.
Yeah, it's just natural.
And I witnessed it. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, to watch. You knew not to step in and say, no, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, I had to, like, fight that. Or
the urge.
There's a lot of times where I'm just like, oh, I need to show them, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of like my wife.
Maybe they need to show me.
Yeah, it's kind of like my wife when we're driving. She's always. Did I tell you that story?
No.
This is funny as shit.
No.
Just like a month or 2 ago, we were leaving my parents after having dinner, and I'm so used to now I don't even pay it homage. I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So Karen will do this thing where she'll point and she's like, hey, she's like, are you allergic to the HOV lane? Like, I'm just curious.
Are you allergic?
Yeah, like
to the fast lane?
Yeah, like what's going on? So she kept doing this, and I just kept silent, and then she realized, she's like, oh my God. I can't believe I'm doing that, and I just started laughing. And as she's confessing that she'll never do it again, she's like, I swear I'm never going to. Why didn't you make the right-hand turn? I had to pull the car over because I couldn't stop laughing. It was the funniest thing. And what was funny about it was she had we would joke, we were laughing, but then she had this little oh my God, and I'm like, honey, if you've never stopped that to the day we die, it doesn't bother me. I actually find it adorable.
Totally.
Stuff like that doesn't bother me. I just think it's funny. I'll
funny.
See her finger pointing like that direction.
The smallest nudge.
When she says, are you allergic to the HOV lane? Oh my God.
The smallest of nudges.
Yeah, it's funny. But to me, that's endearing. I think it's adorable. But she's trying to control my driving from the passenger seat, and it's not going to happen.
And it's also funny because, like, that truly shows us, like, the difference between kind of those unconscious and conscious, those subconscious, type of activity, habit, and what habit is. She and her conscious mind, no, she's not trying to, nag you or point you or any of that. It's just a subconscious type of.
Now, don't get me wrong. When I drive with her, those thoughts run through my head. I've just learned not to say anything.
Well, dude,
so like it's not like I'm this pure individual. I've just learned not to say anything because it would just aggravate the shit out of me. Last thing I want to do is aggravate someone that's driving.
But the thing is, you see the computer for what it is. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's what I always say to myself, because I the same type. I still have this garbage come up, but you're right. I'm like, that doesn't need to be said. Well, this doesn't need to be done, or I don't need to voice this opinion in multiple situations, whether that's romantic relationship, parents, friendship, work life, anything. I watched it come up, and I'm like, whoa, computer, subconscious mind. I don't need to regurgitate that.
Now,
where normally it would come out, and I would say, oh, that was just me.
Yeah, because in the car, I've learned not to do that. But in other cases, I'm like, shit.
Exactly.
What'd you say? I'm like, just never mind. It slipped out. It was, and she's like, is that how you're thinking? I'm like, I'm not thinking that. These thoughts are just coming in my head, and I try to rationalize the crazy shit.
Well, that's another thing too. Is we're taught as a society that we are our thoughts. That what come up, you are that, and it's the more we can teach people, and the more people can come to see that these thoughts, they're not our thoughts. They're thoughts that are out there, and we're like syncing up to them based on the field we're vibrating at.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And then if you act on it, you solidify it in that moment. You solidify it in that moment. But then when you let it pass on by, you choose another thing.
It's moving through you.
Yeah, because that's when people what are you thinking? I'm like, you really don't want to know what I'm thinking because it's crazy. It's like a little freaking monkey in there, like
literally, dude.
Yeah,
all over the place, weird, a cool, funny, like all sorts of crap.
And that's where phrases like actions are everything.
Yeah.
Because people will talk based on their thoughts, but their actions really show you how, what they're conditioned to do.
Correct.
Are they conditioned to whatever? And sometimes, part of my experience is getting out of condition completely and staying present. Because in the present moment, and that means getting rid of all habits via good, via bad. But, it's nice to have good habits so when you fall asleep, at least you don't get yelled at.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Well, Neale Donald Walsh touches on all sorts of this, so I'm excited to get into his stuff. Before we jump into our first video, so Neale Donald Walsh was born in 1943. He was raised Catholic. I thought that was kind of cool. Frank and I were both raised Catholic, so we know he had that imprint of just that Catholicism guilt that we all share.
And he talks about that with the book. So Conversation with God, when you read it, there seems to be a lot of Christian background, and he explains why it is, because this information spans across every religion. But why it has that is because he himself, Neale Donald Walsh, was raised, so it's almost like using the reference point from where he came from. But if he was Hindu, it would have sounded differently, and there are other people that had these conversations with God in different religions. So just the jargon and the examples he give are based on Christianity because that's how we know. It's kind of like if information comes through me, English is a language I'll speak it in. But if someone was speaking French or Italian or anything, the information would be the same. It's just it would sound different.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I explain that.
No, that's perfect. I like that analogy. I'm trying to think what else. He's written 39 books. That's a lot of books.
Yeah.
So not just Conversations with God, but he has a ton of stuff out there, guys. He just released his most recent book in December of 2020 called The God Solution. And yeah, I mean, those were just kind of some of the points I wanted to share before we dove into this. Why don't we kick things off with Mr. Walsh himself?
All right.
There are three things I want to share with you. Number one, your growth process is complete. Number two, there's nothing going wrong in your life, nor has there ever been. And number three, you're not alone. They are, in fact, what I would call the three biggest secrets that I learned in my conversations with God. The biggest secret of life is that our growth process is complete. In fact, I'll go further. Growth was never necessary to begin with. That you were completely evolved when you came here. That is, at the moment of your birth. You were born in a state of utter perfection. And if you want to see perfection, perfection personified, as I call it, just look into the eyes of a baby. You will see it there. Nothing is wanted, nothing is needed, nothing is missing. You're looking into the face of perfection. Most people don't understand that they were finished with what they imagined they came here to do before they arrived. That the purpose of life was not to somehow get better or grow up, grow up spiritually, or to become somehow more than you now are. That the purpose of life is not to become more than you are, but to be who you are and who you were the moment you arrived. Now, the problem is if we think we are here to become somehow more than we were when we arrived, that the purpose of life is to evolve into something greater. The problem with that is we think that there's something we have to do or to be or to have, that we have to acquire something somehow or another, more wisdom, more understanding, more clarity, and for that matter that there are physical things we need to acquire as well in order to be the fullest expression of who we really are. But the process works exactly in reverse. In fact, there's nothing for us to be or to do or to have that we are required to be, do, or have in order to express who we really are. The process works precisely in reverse. We are not here to acquire anything, but to give everything. We are not here to acquire, but to give, to demonstrate. Life is about demonstration. It's not about evolution. So we've not come here to somehow get stuff, even to get more wisdom, more clarity, more understanding, none of that. We are here to give and to demonstrate the clarity, the understanding, the awareness, the consciousness that we came in here with. However, the culture teaches us exactly the opposite. The culture into which we were born here on this planet teaches us you know nothing, you got a lot to learn, you got a long way to go, buddy, blah, blah, blah. And furthermore, interestingly enough, some of the religious culture actually teaches us that what we need to learn, what we need to understand is ultimately ungraspable. That is, it's out of our reach. And what I understood then in this flash of insight that I received in my conversations with God is that you are perfect just the way you are right now. Or to put it in simple terms, which is difficult for some people to grasp or to embrace, you are divine. That is, you are my begotten child. Not just my only begotten son, but you are all my begotten sons and daughters in whom I am well pleased. And your job is not to somehow get better or become more than you are now, but simply to demonstrate who you are right now. And why? Why bother demonstrating who you are right now? What's the purpose of that? So that, I was informed, God might know itself experientially through the expression of life in every one of its forms, including the form that we call you.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, this was a great clip to kind of start off with. This reminds me of the stuff so Frank, you've always said this to me, and it's awesome, but you've always said the only thing people are doing wrong is thinking that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And that sums it up.
Yeah. When I was a kid and I felt like I was doing something wrong and some authority, like an adult, whatever, or even a friend would say, it's going to be okay. Everything's, I believed them and it felt so good. So there, the truth lies because they didn't tell me how it was going to work out. And there is something really fundamentally true about that. And we all know it because whenever I tell people that we didn't come here to learn or we didn't come here to advance, we came here to experience. Just like when you buy a car, the car is already complete. But once you get the car, now you're going to travel in the car, go here to there and stuff like that. The car doesn't get better as you drive it. It has more experiences. That's it, period. And when we understand that, we actually find joy in our experiences rather than hardship in our experiences. Mm-hmm. And then the experiences become pure. They become inclusive, not exclusive. You know, we draw people in, we share them. We actually share our experiences. Like, what do you think happy hour is about?
Yeah.
It's sitting down on Friday evening, sharing your week with your friends, you know, via good or bad, hopefully good, but we love to share. But there is no right or wrong. And when you're with your true friends, they don't judge you on that. We're doing it inside. Somehow we bought into this weird story that we have to, I'm not as good, I'm not, you know, and again, religion can do that. You know, you're not pure enough.
Our movies do that, our television shows.
Can you imagine, like, thinking about, like, if, okay, you have to go through so in the Catholic Church, you have to go to certain sacraments to get through life to get to the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, what happens if you died at 5 years old before you made your first communion? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, okay, you're baptized, you know, that's why they want to get that in. So at least you're resolved there. And I'm like, all right. And then you got to get married. And you get, you know, there's all these sacraments you have to make in order to get to kingdom of heaven. And I'm like, this is a lot of work, you know? And then if you believe that, it's like, well, what happens if I don't make it to this point where I make the sacraments? Like, well, you have to come back and do it again. I don't know. It's like a makeup test.
Well, shit, our religion doesn't even teach that. They just say, "Oh, you're burning in hell."
yeah. It's like a makeup.
They don't even tell people you come back for another round.
Yeah, just make sure you do everything right and you stick around. And
well, that's it. You know, like,
and the thing is, like, someone who died would never know that. But if you lost somebody, you would feel weird because, like, oh my God, they didn't experience the glory. Are they in heaven? These are weird concepts, as we're finding out now, to actually think about a loved one that died. And the truth is, understanding death and to an experiential thing. It's like wake. What is it Ram Dass?
Yeah. What about him?
Taking off.
Taking off a shoe.
Tight pair of shoes.
Yeah.
At the end of
so
the
he
day.
compares. Ram Dass said, "Death is like taking off a tight shoe."
Yeah.
Which is a great.
And everyone knows, especially women. Women know this more than anyone because
just that.
It's like, oh my God, it feels so
sense
good.
of relief. Yeah.
But to the rest of us, like, did they wear the shoe properly? Did they walk properly? And so we grieve over that experience they had. Was it long enough? The shoe wasn't worn out for them to take it. All this crazy stuff that goes in our head. Well, this happened to me. I want my shoe to wear out before I have to take it off. And I'm like, where'd that come from? It came from incompleteness. I'm like, the world is complete. There is nothing new under the sun. But you, as a being, haven't experienced it all, and you never will. But that doesn't matter. But experience, and when you open up to experience, it's like, oh, wow, you share them. Via what sometimes they're seemingly bad because we don't understand them, but you still share it. That's why they created therapy. To share it.
To share it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool how he talked about, you know, he compares like growing up, and I felt this way growing up, you know, people would be like, oh yeah, you know, you got a lot to learn, buddy, you know, like, you know, whether that's a family member, friend, you know, teacher, employer, all this shit, you know, you're always kind of like, okay, what do I need to figure out next in order to get better? Like, that's kind of what we're taught, you know, and I remember that feeling, especially like being like a young professional, like trying to get into the workforce, like, all right, I've got to pay my dues. I need to learn this shit. I need to work my way up, all that type of stuff. And then on the flip side, we got religion telling us, you know, the concept of God is too far beyond your sinner mind. And you'll never be able, you know, to learn, you know, and understand this because it's too far beyond you. And now it's like, well, what the fuck? You know? So I'm just screwed both ways, you know? And he captures it there like so well, like, oh yeah, you know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, you know.
It's almost like I'm going to bring that movie in Slumdog Millionaire into it, but you understand the story if no one ever had seen the movie. He's at this point on a game show and he keeps answering the questions, which makes him arrive at winning $1 million. But when the question's asked and he answers it, the curiosity of how he knew it without going to university and all this other stuff, but it flashes back to a point in his life where he actually experienced this, where most people are taught not to experience but to gain more information, so they're being informed rather than experiential aspects of life. So here is a person that wasn't institutionalized, so to speak, and just had the experiences, and he was winning the game. And so that's the ultimate way of living life, like the Slumdog Millionaire. Again, and it was obviously, you know, life actually does happen that way because no one taught me English. I just picked it up. When I got into school, they laid out the grammatic aspects of, how it, what the structure is and explain it. But I picked up English language, and if I would lived in China, I would have picked up Chinese. Japan, I would have picked up Japanese. But I just so happened to live in America, and New York, so I have a slight accent. Because it used to be a lot worse, but or a lot better, I should say.
A lot better.
Yeah, go on.
A
You gotta
lot
stay
better. I
positive.
like that.
Yeah, you couldn't understand me. You sound like a foreigner. But
It's true though.
yeah, and we pick these things up, and they're through experiences.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, and even being told what to do in the right way, that into itself is an experience you can turn around and not have to say, my life would have been so much better if my teachers were nicer to me. I'm like, no, it wouldn't have. Now I have funny stories about my teachers not being nice to me. And, I've learned to choose to reframe it. Again, and I chose to do that because the other way was too dreadful. I don't like telling horror stories.
Well, it's funny because we think as if that's a different way of doing things, but in reality there is truth, and the only truth there is none of that was needed. So we actually learn the opposite of truth, and that's what he was saying in here too. Like we're kind of brought up, the blind leading the blind. We kind of talk about this a lot. We're like, oh yeah, this is how it's done, but what's being done is not the truth. We're actually learning a weird way about ourselves. We're not informed of the abilities we have or the way of how we need to experience things in order to take them in further in life.
Yeah, and that's where the understanding paradox
We've got to figure that out after we go through all the bullshit.
Yeah, but so whether it was directly or indirectly done, but you take it certain teachings like the Zen Buddhism or Zen mastery teaching, where they'll purposely mess with their pupils, but they know that, and then eventually a pupil is not put off by the messing with them, and then now let's take it to another level.
Know.
So they were and actually we've done it. We all do it in all cultures. Every culture, their parents will mess with the child and tell them what they know to be false information to see if the child figures it out. That's regaining the wisdom. Wait a minute, that's not right. I'm like, well, so how do you know it's not right? Because you already came here knowing this. So we're waking up. Now, some people take it to the nines where they really think it should be done this way, and they're not playing with the child. And we see that's what we call cruelty in the world. Because they really believe if you do it this way, everything will work out. And it's not working out because you're not doing it correctly.
Yeah.
And that's a heavy burden for a child, let alone an adult, which we're all children, to hold on to. I'm like, you're not doing it. I'm like, well, hold on a second.
Well, that's where most of us are at in life, is we feel like we're just not doing it right.
There is a series. Oh, what the hell is it called? 3 Bodies. Oh my God! I just started watching it.
I haven't heard about that.
I'm.
Is it on Amazon?
It's on, I believe, Netflix.
Okay.
And it's about. It's in China. It's it's both in Chinese and American because it's people from it's all over the world.
Yeah.
They're realizing there's a glitch in the fabric of space and time where the physics up till now worked, now it doesn't. So these scientists are killing themselves because nothing makes sense anymore. Now, I can't really speak
too much.
too
That's a great concept,
Yeah,
especially with what we're going through right now with just these shifts.
Yeah, and I can't really explain it that well because I think I'm only 2 or 3 episodes in, but it's a very fabulous thing because everyone doesn't know what they're talking about. So you have these different type of scientists in different fields of whether quantum physics and other type of sciences. So they're very knowledgeable, but the knowledge that they were following, the equation following, are no longer working. And I'm like, yeah.
That perfectly defines
so now the
what this is
5-year-old
going
knows
through.
what they're doing. It's like, so
Yeah,
I'm like,
truly.
did I waste my time at MIT? And the truth is, you didn't waste your time at MIT. I'm not getting at that, but
I need to check this out. This sounds
once
cool.
we get to a point where we think we know something, that's actually in the equation of quantum physics. I heard somebody say, once you think you know quantum physics, you don't know it, and that comes from the Tao Te Ching. Once you label the Tao, it's no longer the Tao. That is this vibrating, echoing thing. But again, you can experience the Tao, but you can't, and I could tell a story about the Tao. But once I label this is the Tao, it's no longer the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I tell Karen, if I call you my wife, you're no longer my wife.
She's like, nice try, buddy.
No, I can't label it.
Nice try.
Yeah.
But it's true. As soon as we label something, as soon as we categorize something, we've taken away the truth within it. We've broken it down into something where it's like, oh, now it's just this. Yeah, and that's how we look at people. That's how we look at medicine. That's how we look at everything. Knowledge.
Yeah, it's everything is wisdom. Flowing. It's moving. So, in this brief moment, this is how it seems. But in the next moment, it all changes. And any true scientist knows that, because they did. If they didn't, science would have ended at the late 1800s. It really would have. But then quantum physics came in, and that all changed. And it's to the true scientist, it's the magnificence of watching the expansion or the new experiences on how to look at life. That's what a scientist is doing. They're looking at life differently, and they're the frontier people on how to look at it differently. But then the next generation comes along and they show us how to look at it differently. And as we move through the generations, you're like, wow. So wisdom is like, oh, wow, okay. There's multiple ways, infinite ways of looking at it. And then life becomes exciting rather than once this is the only way to look at it. Well, if I look at this thing today and then, 20 years later, I'm still looking at the same way, I'm going to go batty. It's like being in a prison. I got the 4 walls, an 8x10. Well, I don't know how big prison is. I've never been.
Probably a 10x10. So if that.
That might be big, yeah. But anyway, it depends what country you're into.
Totally.
But all of a sudden, that becomes so isolating and so boring and so whatever, because the expansion is no longer there when you're looking at the outside world.
I like how he started this off with the baby type of like an analogy or example, where he was saying, hey, we come in here with everything, you know, and he's right. When you look into a baby's eyes, you can see that natural light. But I just thought it was kind of funny because, in my head, I'm thinking, you're right. You don't come in going, man, I don't know how to talk. I don't know what's going on. I can't make money. How am I going to eat? Like a baby is not sitting there saying, how am I going to communicate? How am I going to... No, they flow with it and it works out, and it always works out.
Yeah, it always works out, yeah.
And we're not taught that way, though. We're just not. We're taught, like, how could that be? As if there's this absolute, like, matter like world around us at all times that just is not changing, and that's not the case. We've been so had this what is it? Is it Plato's cave? Like, we've had this cave, our whole life put up about this is what this is what life is, that we're so afraid to let go because we think everything around us is just going to fall apart and we're going to become poor and destitute and
and then the one person who left the cave and came back and tried to explain to the other people this was not all there was, they didn't believe him.
No.
And that's kind of like one of the clips, I'm sure we'll cover that probably next one we'll do. I
was going to say, it's like the guy interviewing Neale Walsch in the next clip.
And so for some people, know that everything that comes out controversial, keep an open heart and open mind to it. Don't even attach to it either. Whatever makes sense for you will come about. But don't try to attach it, because we don't want to start cults as well. Like, cults are started because people want to believe in something so greatly they'll believe in whatever in front of them. Mm-hmm. But we have to be very fluid. So the whole idea of opening my mind to everything and attaching it to nothing seems to be one of the greatest ways to live life. Just like a surfer does not attach themselves to a particular wave. The better the surfer becomes, they can feel the swell, they go on, they surf that wave until it disappears. Then they paddle back out and do it again and again and again and again and again, till one day, they do it again.
Well, that's it. We have, again, going back to our supercomputer that we call, a mind and
mine's not a supercomputer. My mind is it's like a calculator, like the one you had on your Seiko watch back in the day.
School.
Yeah, that's all I could do. Addition, it can't even do some, but yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like we get everything that we've been taught And I mean, I hate to put like blanket statements out there, but the majority of things we were taught are fly in the face of exactly the opposite of like what we should be doing, and really like how things work. And we've just been shown that like, hey, this is the only way to do something or accomplish something. Otherwise, you could get hurt, you could starve, you could lose everything. All of this, and that's not true. And so it feels very weird going up against these types of feelings because of it's like you're walking into a whole different reality. It's like saying everything in front of you is telling you that can't be the way. But as soon as you cross that bridge, it's like this world opens up. That's like, oh wait, it did work out, and this always works out. And the only thing that truly exists is that I exist and that I'm experiencing this, and I'm going to experience this no matter which direction I take. But I guess what I'm saying is like everything that we have been told how life is, I would suggest you begin to question that.
Yeah, and the reason we do this, because so right now Mike and I talk about Neale Donald Walsch, and I imagine in one of his videos he'll come across this. If not, I'm gonna express this deeply right now. When we fall into the the lower energy centers, survival, this stuff sounds like jargon. It really does, and trust me, because I was there. But when you go up to the your centers, like your heart, and you start moving up to higher centers, this all starts to open up. You might express it differently. You might look at it differently. You might come up with different analogies based on different experience you had. But when you're in survival, this stuff doesn't make sense because you're trying to survive. So understand when you're feeling down and this doesn't make sense, what you can do is you don't have to make sense of it. Just understand you're in a survival mode and accept that survival mode. And in the actual allowing of the survival mode, more than even accepting it, all of a sudden you start to move the energy upward into the heart, to the throat, to the to the third eye, and then onto your crown chakra. All of a sudden you then get downloads of information. That's what Neale Donald Walsch, like he woke up in the middle of the night frustrated and angry, and somehow those energy centers opened up, and the words that he wrote down based on God were coming from his heart. So when we know that, like I could still fall into that downward spiral, and I know like life just says it seems cloudy, but I also know it's because I'm in my survival state right now, and that allows me to like cool down, not do anything, and know at any moment it's going to burst up and the sun's going to come out because the clouds are going to pass by. Knowing the structure of how the body works helps out. Because a lot of people, like, they get into these places and they're trying to stay there. I'm like, you can't stay there, but you can understand what's happening. And when you understand what's happening, you're there.
Yeah.
It's a paradox, people.
No, that's a good way to say it, because I'm always trying to think of like a way to describe this, and that was great. Another way that like I would kind of explain it to people or give an example is, have you ever seen like a video of the like kids in like North Korea and the amount of like conditioning they have, and they have to like cheer when this like Kim Jong-un guy's walking by, and they have to like look very like happy and cheerful and all this type of stuff, and the way that their school system is set up and what they learn, and us looking in, we can see like, oh, what they're learning is not true. They're learning like this history of Kim Jong-un that he created and all this type of stuff. And we can see like, wow, this is kind of weird, that they're taught this. But that's exactly what's happening to us in a different way. Yeah. And so if you can see it like that, you can see that like all this heavy conditioning, all this stuff, all this consumerism, everything like that, it's like it's just a different Kim Jong-un like for us. And so, like, if you
different level, that's a great example.
Look at it like that, you can be like, "Holy shit!" I see what's now been going on with me.
Yeah.
And like in school and stuff like that, we look back at like histories, and we're like, "Oh, the Mayan calendar and things like this." Like, "Oh, that's so funny." They believed this was like actually real, and they thought they were following this god and stuff like. And that's exactly what we're doing when we're talking about this man in the clouds, and we call him, Jesus, and all this type of stuff. Like,
yeah,
like we got to like look back and say, well, couldn't this be happening to me in my experience right now? And we don't. We actually pretend like, nope, mine's real, and theirs are bullshit.
Yeah, it's almost like talking about a prisoner in prison in a cell, but most people actually are imprisoned because they have to go to work to pay the bills. But they don't see it that way. But they feel it. And this is where stress comes from. But what we're really all looking for is a sense of freedom. We've had it when we were children, and somewhere along the line we've given it up just to regain and understand it. So freedom is a feeling, not a look. Because there are people that actually are in prison. So like Nelson Mandela, he was well into his prison sentence to where, prior to this moment of him waking up and realizing he was free, he was very angry and bitter. And I get it. He was thrown into prison unjustly. And then one day he felt nothing but love. And it's not like he got out of prison right away. But he gained this strength in there, and he was still confined to this prison, where most of us aren't confined to anything other than the prison in our head. And so whether you're stuck in a room or an elevator or whatever, the confinement is in your head. There is nothing out there. And Nelson Mandela explains that brilliantly. And that's what we're talking about. People think freedom looks like something. It looks like $1 million in your bank account. Like, no, it doesn't. There's no look to freedom. It's a feeling. And the more you experience the feeling of freedom, things and stuff like that appear and disappear, and they come and go easily. But freedom is a feeling.
Well, it's funny you say that too, because that kind of relates. Like, our Western society does like a great job of like showcasing that, like, the United States, like, land of the free, like we have so much freedoms, etc. No, like you have the choice of freedom to a certain extent, and you are free to eat any garbage you want. You are free to buy as many things as you want.
But that's not the freedom we're talking about.
Exactly.
Those are just
and that's
choices.
What I'm trying to showcase is like we are taught that we have this freedom, but if you are to really sit there and analyze the situation, we are not free in any capacity. When you wake up, in order to eat that day, you need to make money. And you must be held to a job or that. If you want a roof over your head and you want shelter, if you want anything, like we are not free, but we are conditioned very heavily that we have all these freedoms, and we only have the freedoms to do the things that don't really put us in the best position.
Because when you put your attention on conditions, you're not free. When you're living unconditional life, you are free. But you're still living in the physical world. Doesn't mean you do away with the stuff. You could be completely free and still live in a mansion, have a lot of money, or the opposite. It doesn't matter.
Well, let's say like you're born into this world, right? And there's this area on the beach, let's say, and there, you can fish, you can go there. There's structures you can build. There's nothing. These man-made created laws that exist, right? Or you have the choice to go into this community where it's about making money, and then from there you can build a big mansion, and you can do these sorts of things. If we actually had these two options presented in front of us, I feel like a lot of people would go, hey, I like this. I can wake up when I please. I can go to sleep when I please. I can have food when I please. I can rest when I please. But that sense of freedom doesn't exist. We're taught that there's only this world where you have to, pay for your electricity, pay for your gasoline. There are no alternate sources of those, even though there are. And just, again, we have to really see that we have, been placed into a system that has taught us an idea. And this is why I bring up the Kim Jong-un thing, is because it's such a stark thing. But if people can say, maybe that is happening to me, you like let go a little bit, and your consciousness raises,
But those conditions may never change. So like I've heard someone say this, like when I pay my electric bill, I'm thankful that I have electricity.
Yeah, that's what I was
rather than saying I have to pay my electric bill. So the electric bill doesn't go away, because that's the problem with people it can be, they're trying to get rid of systems, right? I'm okay, get rid of system. You're just going to build a new prison. You're going to knock this prison out and create another one. The outside world is not going to save you at all. It's all an inside job. So now when I look at the job I have, I'm like, oh my God, I go to interact with people rather than I have to go to work. I have to pay electric bill. I'm like, you know, it's amazing that like 200 years ago, we didn't have electricity, you know. So when you start looking at it that way, you're free. You're free to use the electricity house, but your outside world to the person watching it doesn't change. But how I feel about the change. So Nelson Mandela was still in that prison, but he was freer than most human beings on the planet. So we have to be careful not to, we keep trying to change the outside world. I'm like,
and we do the same thing with like the spiritual aspect. And Frank, you talk about this a lot. Like when you have to meditate, when you have to do breath work, when you have to do this, you're just creating your own little spiritual prison. And now you've got even more of an ego because now you're looking at other people's prisons going, can you believe these?
How much did you meditate
look
today?
At these prisons that they're in. You know, at least my prison, I'm holier than shit.
I was listening to an interview with Neale Donald Walsh. I like how he said this. He's like, someone asked him, like, how often do you meditate? How many spiritual books do you read? He goes, I meditate every day till I don't meditate every day. I read spiritual books almost all the time unless I'm not reading a spiritual book. And he went through that thing. It's like, yeah, when it occurs.
Trying to show you it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because there was a point where, like when it first started for me, reading spiritual books was exciting. Yeah. And then I realized, okay, I read, 3 spiritual books this month. I got to maintain that. Yep. And then I had to go search for them. Then I started reading shit, Totally. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, wait a minute. And then like a year would go by before I read a spiritual book. And I'm like, I got to get back on it. And then I realized, what am I doing? I don't even want to read. I don't want to read, but I end up reading things that come my way. I'm not looking to read. I'm not looking to meditate. I'm not looking to do anything. It just occurs to me to do it. Just like a kid doesn't look to have fun, they just are fun, and their expression is playing fun. Whether the kid is in their backyard in a tree, in a playground, at school when the teacher's not looking.
Has money, doesn't have money.
No,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, kids don't, no matter where they are, they have fun. So some kid living in the inner city at a playground at like 3 years old, or some kid living in Beverly Hills at 3 years old, they don't know any different. Now, if you swap them, they would notice the environment's different. They wouldn't have much to judge on, so to speak, but they don't know enough to that. They're having fun. But then as the world goes in, somebody's selling us, okay, this is what everyone needs to have and everyone wants. So when Robin Leach hit, I remember I was watching years ago, I was sitting I just bought this 2-bedroom condo in New York. And I'm sitting there like I love this freaking place. I put on the TV and I got Robin Leach, Lifestyles of Rich and Famous. I'm like, that fucking closet's the size of my house. And I'm thinking how I felt. But I felt bad for a second, but when the show went off, I went back to loving my place. It was all perception. But prior to that, I was living in a castle. I really was. It was amazing. My first place I ever bought. And, I was like 20, 21 years old. And it was just great. Like I was out of my parents' house. It was great. But then Robin Leach screwed me over. Because I didn't know that actually existed inside the house.
That is so at the essence of what we're getting at is exactly that. Yeah. Which is, things were great. And then I saw this and then I wanted that. Yeah. And that's all by design, this whole consumerism thing and everything that we're born into and these ads and, that you're not good enough, you're not a good enough weight, you're not a good enough a level of attractiveness. Now we need more makeup, all this shit. Yeah. It's very heavy. And when you start to see it, you allow it to let go. You allow yourself to let go of it. I was reading about this tribe. I can't remember. It was this African tribe. And they were talking about how their kids and like they when they're raised, they exude this level of confidence and knowing. and and you can see them as they walk with their mothers and their fathers and stuff like this, and it's because they were never taught that anything was wrong about them, or that they needed to look a certain way in order to be right, and they find it very
they probably have no mirrors.
like mind numbing that wait, that's something you worry about, wait, that's something you judge yourself on, like that has nothing to do with what you are, and that's so natural to that.
Our consumer structure is based on lack. You need this, you need this to be complete, and people fall into it. I'm like, but what I'm talking about doesn't wipe out the structure. It just now becomes an experience rather than I need. You don't need it, but why not try it? Because now there are people trying to get rid of everything, and I'm like, well, now you're creating another prison. I'm like, allow to whatever happened, but so I can do all those things. I could buy a mansion, buy a really expensive car, but it's an experience. I'm not holding on to it. The car doesn't make me feel better. It's an expression of my feeling, and it's going to be an experience. But when the car goes, the house goes, who cares? It doesn't mean I deny those things. I just don't attach myself to those things. Just like when you go on vacation, who attach themselves to the VRBO they're living in? I'm like, even though you own your house and pay the mortgage, it's still a vacation. It might be a 90-year vacation, but you were still here on vacation. So I'm not saying don't get a house, don't do that, but realize don't attach yourself to it. You're just in this temporary, everything's temporary, because after a certain amount of time you might want to sell the house, or you have to put a new roof on it. All these things happen. These are momentarily, temporary things, and get excited about all that stuff. Get excited about putting a new roof on.
Get excited about that. Anything can change in a given moment.
Get excited, and then the experience, whether it's putting a new roof on or getting a new car, will be exciting. It doesn't matter. But we think, okay, if I have to spend more money, and if I make more money, woohoo! I'm like, well, clouds come and go, people. We have no control over that. I can follow the cloud or let it pass by, and another cloud will appear. And that's really how life is. And we start to look at everything as an experience. All of a sudden, all on the front is good. It really is.
And it's always been good.
Yeah.
We've just been hoodwinked and duped that.
Yeah. And that's
not.
why. And now I'm saying this for experience. So when something does happen, people are like, well, why do I feel bad? I'm like, because this experience is letting you, is teaching you or allowing you or giving you the moment. You don't have to take it to letting go. I just recently, in like a 7-day period, I just lost 2 people close to me. My father, and then my ex-wife died within 7 days of each other. And, my father died, he was 87 years old, not to use an excuse, but I had a really, really good relationship with my dad. And, you could feel it, but it passed on. I was, okay with it. And, right to the end, I would talk to him and he would shake his head. My dad was a jokester. He actually died on
April Fool's Day. Literally. I remember.
God, he could have died on.
That was his last last
it was
hurrah,
funny because April Fool's Day was the Monday after Easter.
Yep.
So I'm like, he could have died on
on a nice holy day.
He could have died on Good Friday.
Yeah, you're right.
But he's like, no, I'm not going to
He's
Jesus.
saying, I got to go out.
I'm not going the Jesus route.
Exactly.
I'm going the jokester route. And
Exactly.
that's how my dad lived his life. He actually showed me how to be a child all the time. And then seven days later, my ex-wife passed away from a major heart attack. And
she's also the mother of your son.
Yeah, so the major grief onto me at that moment, letting go, is, is my son going to be okay? And over these last couple of days, my son showed me the mastery of living. And like I watched him jump in his car, and his grandfather, who is the mother of his mom, lived up in Payson.
Father of his mom.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the father of his mom. And Payson from where we are is about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. My son twice in 1 week went to go console him. Because he just lost his daughter. And here my son, I'm like, you okay? He's like, you may go? It's like, no, I got it. So here my son's doing this. He just turned 21, and you know, I'm sure he's gonna have his waves and stuff. But I remember just sitting there talking to him, like, and realize, my God, he's teaching me this stuff.
Hell yeah.
And I don't to know what level he's letting go and holding on to. I don't know, but all of a sudden when I realized that, because I remember calling a buddy of mine, like a day or so afterwards, and it was my buddy Paul, and this guy, you know, he's like the manly man type guy, right? Yep. And I remember, like, I was leaving the house and I called him up, and all of a sudden when I went to tell him, because he knew my ex-wife, you know, and he knows my son well. My son actually worked for him for a little bit, and I started breaking down. I couldn't even talk, and like, I think it shocked the hell out of this guy. He's like, there's no crying in life, you know, type of guy.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't do that to anybody else, but I did to him. And so we got off the phone. He's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I just had a moment, you know." And then I'm driving, and I called my sister up, and she's out here, and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "How's Tristan doing?" Because she's staying at my mom's. My son's staying there as well for the moment.
His son's Tristan, for those listening.
And she's like, "Oh, he's doing good. He's helping Anthony change out the faucet in Mom's kitchen." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, here I am breaking down. This kid's helping putting a faucet in his grandmother's kit, you know, and I'm like, so he gets on the phone. Like, "How's it going?" He's like, "Yeah, it's going good, Dad." And all of a sudden, my heart just opened up. My son allowed me to open it up. My worrying was unwarranted, you know. We just have to be there for each other. And it was the weirdest thing, because here I'm thinking I have to be the strong person for my son, which was killing me, because I said I had to be. And then here he is, you know. And it's funny, is a buddy of his came over like the day it happened.
Yeah.
They're like, "Okay, we're going to take you out to dinner." And we're sitting there. I'm like, "Okay, guys, take care of him." He's like, "Yeah," and he's laughing. And one kid goes, "Hey, I listened to your podcast."
Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, it was funny. I'm like, my son's never even turned it on, and he laughs. And now I realize he doesn't need to.
Yeah, right.
Like, he's already, at some level, he already knows this. Like, when you know something, you don't need to know it any deeper.
Yeah.
You know, maybe at some point he'll get a kick out of listening to me, but he doesn't. And it's funny, because he's at this interesting level.
Isn't that funny how we think we need to be the one showing our kids?
No,
you know,
he showed me.
And doing this type of stuff. And it's weird how we do that. We don't, like, our society and stuff, we don't teach that. We don't teach that, hey, you need to learn as much from your child as they need from you. No, we're taught whatever you say goes. You're teaching them the ropes and all this.
Yeah, children teach us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
on every level.
Yeah. And that's like any parent out there, like, how do I parent my child? One thing I could tell you is just pay attention to your child. They'll show you how to parent them. You know, and that's why, you know, if a parent has like multiple children, each child has to have a different way of being parented. That's why if you try to do one way, it's like you always have that black sheep. I'm like, why? Because you didn't ask that black sheep how they want to be parented. You're comparing them to the other ones. That's where the problems come in. But yeah, I learned this immense letting go, where I thought I was there. I really did. And then when my ex-wife, she just died suddenly. I was talking to her,
and she was young, like young.
You know, well, 50, yeah.
But I mean, that's freaking young.
I just want to let people know I wasn't dating like a
14-year-old. But still, like 50, you would never imagine anybody, you know.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden, like, here I thought, you know, when that happened, it shocked me, but I realized, okay, that I had to learn to let go as well. And, you know, I think at the highest level, the greatest gift a loved one could give you is death, because you know, it's the freedom is letting go, and it really is. But it's not letting go is what pulls us through the cosmos and hit every speed bump along the way. And for like a couple of days, that was happening to me, and I felt heavy. Like, I remember, like I didn't take off from doing stuff, but a client of mine was like, "Is there something wrong with your neck?" I'm like, "No, why?" But I was walking with this weight like this, and I propped my neck up. I'm like, no, I just, you know, I made some weird excuse, but the truth is, I had this heavy burden on myself. I pulled it in, but when I talked to my son that morning, it just. And it's not like he's faking it. I can't,
You can't fake
Yeah.
something like that.
So he allowed me to let go even more, and then realize that we don't die. We just transform into another experience. It's kind of like how we wake up from a dream. Yeah. Even if the dream is good, it's like, yeah, I want to get on with my day, And that's kind of how I was reminded, a week ago about that. And this is it. But that's what I'm saying is life is still, it's going to, so if you have an old belief that you're not aware of, life will pull it out of you. And then that's the opportunity to say, okay, all right, thank you. Not like I should be further along. Why did I get upset? I'm like, again,
this shouldn't have happened.
There's the thing, like the only thing I'm doing wrong is thinking I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like you're not. Like we have these beliefs that we're unaware of. Like if you had a thorn in your right leg, but you didn't feel it banging up against the wall, remind you it's there, just pull the damn thing out. Mm-hmm. But you weren't aware of it until you hit it. Mm-hmm. And life will hit you with stuff like that. And there is no failure. It's just understanding or experiential understanding. And
everything is pushing us in that direction to bring us closer and back to our higher self.
Exactly. That's all it's doing.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing.
It's not testing you. Yeah. Life isn't testing you. It's not a test. It's an experience. We start carrying so much baggage, and the universe is saying, you don't have to bring lunch to a luncheon. Mm-hmm. You don't have to pack a lunch.
Exactly.
You're going to a restaurant. Where do you leave? You know what I'm saying?
We got to be prepared. That's what we're always thinking.
Like I'm going to bring a snack in case I don't like the food. And okay, we have a full smorgasbord here. You don't need to bring food, but if you want to bring food, go right ahead. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. We carry so much with us through the days and the years, and we wonder why our neck is sore and our back is like, because you never needed to carry that. And as we learn to let go of it and leave it, and whenever step I take, the ground will meet my feet below.
That's faith.
It's knowing. Mm-hmm. It's knowing that, I don't step out thinking like the ground's going to collapse. Mm-hmm. Unless you're in a marsh and there's like quicksand.
But even there, there'll be something to catch you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And that's what this whole paradox of life is about.
Yeah.
Which is, it's this constant hide and seek with ourselves. I think Alan Watts was the guy who said that.
Yes, I love the way he said it.
Yeah. And we
hide
are
and seek.
Constantly, playing these tricks and stuff on ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, what if I'm not okay? What if my son's not okay? What if, all this shit. Rather than, what if everything's just great? What if everything's happening exactly like it needs to?
Yeah. Cloudy days and sunny days are equal.
It's like that one song, Thank you for the sunshine, thank you for the rain.
Yeah. Now, you're going to feel different on a cold day than you are on a hot day. That's a given. Don't think it's supposed to feel the same. But to the mind, it's just an experience. But if the mind says, I ought not to be having this experience, this is where we go off. This is where suffering accrues. Mm-hmm. And once we start to allow what's happening, this becomes magnificent. It really does, because there's nothing greater than the bluest day in the sky after a hurricane. If you go to the ocean after a hurricane, I don't know if you experience a hurricane, you've never seen such a calm ocean in your life. Where when there's no storm, there's waves. But right after a hurricane, it's like a lake. It's crazy. And there's this calmness based off the contrast of the hurricane. So some days you have hurricanes, some days you have thunderstorms. It's just, but after that passes, because after a thunderstorm, the ocean isn't as calm as the hurricane.
The secret is knowing that it's all working out.
Yes.
And it's all working in your favor.
Yeah, so when the hurricane's happening, hold on. Be wise, be smart. And when it passes on, it's a time to relax. But the holding on allowed you to get the ultimate feeling of relaxation. Mm-hmm. And stuff like hurricanes don't happen that often compared to every day of the year. It's a type of thing.
No, that's totally true.
Yep. All right.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you want to get into this one?
Yeah, let's jump into our next clip.
You got it.
This one's my favorite, actually.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. In other words, I don't really see it as my thoughts, God's thoughts, my thoughts, God's thoughts. I see all thoughts as God's thoughts. But the part of us that has individuated as Ernie and Neale can sometimes get in the way of that move through, that come through of the message, and can degrade the message, and can misunderstand the message, and can misinterpret the message. And so my job really is to get myself, I'm talking about my little self. See, I think of myself in two ways, Ernie. Little self, big self. Little guy, big guy. And my job is to get my little self, localized me, out of the way, to step out of the way, so that the universal me, that is the part of me that is connected to the universal reality and the total essence of life as it is, so that that part, that essence, can come through clearly and cleanly and with joy and love and wisdom.
People that have not read your writings would probably right now be very concerned with what you're saying and taking it as, is he saying he himself is God?
Well, I am saying that.
Explain why.
I am saying, but because it's the truth. I mean, Jesus said that. Many masters have said that. Many people have said that, and rightfully so. God has said that. Have I not said ye are gods? It's right out of the scriptures. So,
why then does it anger so many people? Why does it frighten so many people to hear someone say what you're saying?
because they have denied themselves. And I tell you that if we're not careful, we will all deny ourselves 3 times before the cock crows. We will imagine ourselves not to be God, not to be even made up of that which God is made up of, to have no connection with God whatsoever. The grandest illusions of humans is the illusion of separation from life and from God. And if God could talk to us directly, in fact, she can, but if she did so in a way that would be undeniable, that even doubters, even the doubting Thomases, could not deny it, I believe what he would say would be something quite profound. He would say, I am you. I am you. But for a very simple reason, Ernie. Let's understand who and what God is. There is nothing that God is not. Nothing that God is not. God is the sum total of everything, the all in all, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the left and the right of it, the up and the down of it, the here and the there, the before and the after of it. Nothing stands outside of that which God is. That would necessarily include Ernie and Neale, wouldn't it?
I love that. Now, something he didn't explain it like here, but I've heard him explain it, and we talked about this earlier. The reason people, when you say I am God, is because their understanding of God is this entity that's over them and controlling of them. What Neale is saying, and he's made this statement before, but not necessarily in this interview, is I am not God over you. I am God over my own domain, and you are God over your own domain, type of thing. And there's a piece of God. Just like each sun ray hitting the earth is a part of the sun, comes from the same place. So we here are having individual godlike experiences, but my sun ray isn't dominion over yours. It's actually contributing to everything else because everything comes outward. So that I just want to make that clear because that's where a lot of people think is we were told God has dominion over us. So, but if I claim to be God, it doesn't mean you have to praise me. That's just
Correct.
a weird thing. Yeah.
Like saying that you are superior to one another.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not superior to anybody. Except for no.
That is a powerful ass statement, though. Like, seeing this situation. So the reason I love this clip was here we are, it's probably maybe 1999, judging by how this interview clip looks and stuff. It's probably
the hairstyle.
Yeah, the hairstyle, the clothing. They're sitting in a church. And I think it's PBS even. Yeah, it says Houston PBS.
Yeah,
but. For this time period, this was extremely controversial because, we were told, hey, this is God. It's blasphemy, to renounce God, let alone how can you claim to be God, And I love how Neale Donald Walsh snaps back with a scripture because that's what's so great is he's like, it says right there in the scriptures, and he's right, and anybody can go find this, have I not told you, ye are all gods, it's very clear and stated in the scripture. What I thought was so cool about this is you can see in the interviewer's face he knows he's speaking truth. You know, it's very difficult to not agree with someone, or it's very difficult to hide an emotion when you are like when you are totally in disagreement with somebody and what they're saying and stuff like that. And you can see him, the interviewer, picking up on, you know, this truth in this interview, and I love watching that. Another thing about this is, again, if you go back to history and you kind of, you know, look like, okay, so we know that it is fact, 100% factual, that the Bible was edited. It was edited by different kings, popes, etc., all trying to put their spin, you know, their version on it. So going back,
yeah, even that, it wasn't written in English.
Yeah, exactly. You know, all of these things. You know, there's so many,
Yeah.
and these are just straight facts. Like, we know that, you know, things were removed. We know that books were removed from the Bible. This is not up for debate. You know, this is like, no, this is historically, you know, accurate. So we know that, right? Okay, well, so now we're looking at this, and this is why certain phrases like that's part of the scripture, you know, they couldn't get everything. You know, they couldn't take out everything that would be referencing your higher self or things like that. But if you go back and you look at, you know, well, why were, you know, kings removing this? Why were, you know, well, it's very clear, you know, why are we telling everybody, you know, they're gods, they can do whatever? I'm the king. People come to me for approval. People come to me for structure. Like, get this shit out of this book, you know? And you have to really have some common sense when you're thinking about this and why certain things were edited. And a lot of what gives us our power, you know, from these religious texts were taken out, were removed, but they couldn't get it all, you know, just like the scripture he cited there, which is, have I not told you, you know, ye are gods. You know, that's very clearly in the scripture. Anybody can go look that up in the Bible right now. You can do it with a simple Google search.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and talk about this phrase, but it's interesting. So, like you talk about back in the 90s is controversial. Mm-hmm. Well, can you imagine back in Jesus' time?
I know, right?
Yeah. But he himself said this, even the least among you can do as I've already done and even greater. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I was growing up, it's like you would only be a tenth lucky. You would only be a little bit lucky if you got anywhere near an eighth of Jesus. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I'm like, am I not him? Mm-hmm. Like, no, you can never be him. And I'm like, but he himself, and this is in the Bible, said this, even the least among you can do as I've done and even greater. Mm-hmm. Where is the misinterpretation of that? So it's
very clear.
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very difficult to interpret that. And greater just means at a higher level. It doesn't mean better. Mm-hmm. The less, you know, less than and greater than are just figures of mathematical numbers and distance. So, in other words, as we go on, we'll have more experiences leading up to greater understanding, type of thing, or be greater feats than we possibly can. But we were told you couldn't. So it was like stepping into a boxing ring and someone told you that you had to tie your hands behind your back while the other opponent got to have their hands out in front of them. And you bought into it. Mm-hmm. Like, why was you getting that ring? Well, this is how I get to the kingdom of heaven. Like, you're not going to win a fight that way.
Yeah.
You might be able to duck a couple of punches.
But that's exactly what's going on.
And if headbutting's not allowed, you're certainly not going to win the fight, you know? So this is what we were told. We got into the ring with our hands behind our back and says, all right, good luck. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, why bother? Like, why bother? And there was tenacious people that got in there and banged it around and got their ass kicked in. Like, you know, like, I could win this. I'm like, yeah, but you can't headbutt. How are you going to win this fight? Mm-hmm. And then someone said, why are your hands tied behind your back? Well,
I was told this is the way.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, one day, someone just pulls that knot, come out, and you start to realize, oh, I can actually, I'm pretty good.
I don't have to suffer. I don't need to be in total pain.
Yeah. And
I don't have to worry.
When you go back to the original rule book of, you know, there was never meant to have your hands tied to begin with, somewhere they ripped that page out. Or they didn't rip it out. It was there. They just glanced over it.
Yeah.
They didn't bring up that. It's like having a document that's everything's in writing, but they don't really bring it to your attention.
Well, that happens all over with all contracts.
Especially you do contracts all day long.
That's true. There's just certain things we just
you put that in the really small fine print.
Yeah.
It's fine print.
And they call it that, the fine print for a reason. Because, that's just, everybody's okay with that.
It's the way it is.
And that's, exactly. It's just the way it is. And we forever have put up with, that's just the way it is. Yeah. And that, and Frank, he was, raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic. We both went to Catholic schools at certain points, all that shit. So knowing this, I don't know, like I see it and it's weird because there's certain things, like for example, we were taught, especially when I was growing up, if you did not go to mass on Sunday, that is a mortal sin, and that is you will burn in hell for
I didn't have
sin.
to worry about that because my dad did not let me not go to church. So my dad was making sure I didn't go to hell, right? Like I had no choice.
But we have these different things, like these weird rules like that, right? Well, okay, so if I miss Sunday once, then I'm going to hell. Okay, this is pretty crazy, and you start you put these things together, and then okay, so this doesn't make sense about the Bible. Well, that's just the way it is, and you kind of are asking these questions as you're hearing this stuff, and none of it really makes up or makes sense. But the moment you challenge it, it's like it's blasphemy. And this is all I'm trying to do is show the level of conditioning that the church has had, and we're hiding behind, smoke and mirrors here with the church saying, this is what Jesus wanted. This is what God wanted. This is the way it was said. This is what, our faith states. And if you do not conform to this, you are wrong and you will burn in hell. And guys, unfortunately, that's not true.
No, and then
and we've been fed a lot of crap.
Yeah, and that's why when you take the workings of, like, say, the Bible, and you say you've read it when you were younger, and then you get into your mid-age, when you read the same passage, it has a different meaning. Why? Because you've had more, what we call more experiences, so you start to look at it differently. So I'm not a historian at the level when it comes to the Bible, so maybe there is some historical facts in there, but I look at it as metaphorically. But just because I look at it metaphorically, I'm not claiming it's not historical either. I don't go either way with it because if I'm not a historian, I don't in this setting, I don't want to claim it's not to be. Mm-hmm. But when I look at stuff metaphorically, because every even true story utilize a metaphoric story to come to an understanding. When I look at these things, every time I look at it based on my experience, I have a deeper level of it, deeper understanding of it. That deeper understanding isn't necessary for me to live a great life, though. It really isn't. Because when I was having a great time at 5 years old, I'm having a great time now. A great time is a great time. Just having a different understanding doesn't make my life better, because with that type of understanding, that's where people started saying, okay, you need to know more to be greater. I'm like, no, you don't. I don't need to know any more. But good luck not knowing more. Like, it's going to happen. Just like I learned the English language, and, depending on who's listening to me, barely. But nonetheless, I picked it up without, it just picked up on my parents talking, right? I really, that's how we work. I'm like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. No one showed me how to walk. I just walked. No one showed me how to eat. I just ate.
Well, it's also why we pick up some of our crazy habits and stuff like that.
Yeah,
too,
I pick up my language and from the neighborhood I grew up in, and my parents obviously, and so you pick up all that stuff, and it's part of it. There's nothing wrong with it, because if I just all of a sudden lived in Merrick, Long Island with a British accent, I'd probably get my ass kicked in the playground. Like, it's hello, chaps. It's like,
what the hell is this guy?
Yeah, so you assimilate to get along, but so that's part and parcel of the experience. That's really it. And then but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
And I do like to just kind of throw this out there too. And this is something I've experienced on my journey, where we keep talking about these different things that we go through, and learning this and learning that. I want to just kind of throw out there a reminder that, we sign on for the roles that we come to play here. And the family you have, the background you came up with, the challenges you faced, the challenges and triumphs that you had to go through life. These were all a role that you signed on to prior to coming here. And again, this isn't something we talk about in our religion, or in Catholicism and stuff like that. We pretend like, you don't have incarnation and all that, even though it was in books of the Bible that were removed, and we're not going to get into any of that.
Yeah, because they don't use the word reincarnation. They use other words.
Correct.
But yeah.
But
life everlasting.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like the more you can see that this plane, this existence that we're having right now is a reality, is more to learn how to, number one, manipulate energy, learn how to use and control energy to build worlds, and you elevate your experience as you're going through the cosmos and going through this whole experience. But it's you're here to remember what you are. That's what the point of this Earth plane is. It's a school, and so like we come here with a hey, this is my character. I'm playing this. This is the family I'm going to be in, and we don't talk about life that way ever. And I remember first hearing life talked about that way, and it rang so much truth in my heart, where I was like, this makes so much sense. I totally signed on for this role.
Yeah, but it's not. It's more than school. It's like the playground. Mm-hmm. So a child look at school and a playground completely different. The playground is just the ultimate experience. We don't need to learn anything. Yeah. We can't, just like when you're on vacation, you don't need to learn anything. You have an experience. Mm-hmm. So we have this dual setting. Like, well, in order to have fun, you have to have a learning process. I'm like, no, you don't. It will just happen. I didn't learn how to speak English. I just did. Mm-hmm. I didn't learn how to play with friends. I just did. When someone teaches a kid how to, like make friends with somebody else, it's the weirdest thing.
Totally.
Like, you got to be friends with Jimmy. I don't like Jimmy. It's
it feels weird.
Yeah. But if you left that alone, if parents left that alone, I'm like, it's not that they don't like Jimmy. They'd rather be with Billy. Mm-hmm. There's something magnetic about Billy. That's just the way life is. But because we create this forcefulness of inclusion, I'm like, we created this weird world around us. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, we're figuring that out as we go.
Well, and that's why like it kind of feels weird when you're in those settings and you can hear like, this is how we do it, and it feels like weird. It doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, but it's just like a game, which like, hey, and like his Mike said about we come here knowing or choosing the role, just like an actor chooses a film, but they haven't experienced it yet, but they remember why they came there. It was to play this role, and then the director will guide them or direct them, and the better the actor comes, the more the actor knows they're acting, the less the director has to direct them.
Well, and I also think that's part and parcel to the experience is
Absolutely.
You never had that experience,
no,
hence
so
the
why
reason
would
you took that role.
Yeah, when we talk about
we want to have it.
Yeah, remembering who you are, the actor, but not the role, because you haven't played it or you haven't finished it yet. Exactly. So that's when people are like, how come I don't remember this? I'm like, no, remember you're the actor. You're not remembering the role, because the role is still ongoing.
Yeah.
You're
You're
it's like remembering a book you're trying to read, but remember you know how to read. That's it. Yeah. I remember I know how to read, but why would I remember the book? I'm only halfway through it.
Yeah. Remember you are source. You are a fractal of this experience that we call God.
Yeah.
And
that's a better way of putting it. The
know?
Fractal, I like that, because when you put it into fractals, it's a smaller part of the whole, which allows the human mind to conceive. Where if you say you're the whole, it's like the human mind can't understand the whole. Just like my refrigerator can't take the electricity directly from the telephone pole or the electrical circuit outside. It has to be taken down through a transformer. To where it can transfer down to what's a refrigerator, 110 or 220, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But the watts coming or the volts coming off the electrical would blow it up. So that fractal, it's still electricity. It's just at a different fractal level, and that's kind of as humans are. We're a fractal understanding of God, but it's still God. It's still who we are. It's just the energy. I don't need. The human mind can't conceive of that whole whole entire.
Well, when you said the sun ray, that was a really good analogy too,
Yeah.
because like, who's going to say that that ray coming off the sun is not the sun? Of course, it's the sun.
A candle's a sun.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, when you light a candle, where do you think that energy comes from?
Mm-hmm.
The sun. It's like a Bluetooth though, like it's just there and isn't. You know.
But that's the thing, we're
Yeah.
taught like, oh no, that would be looked at as like it was magic.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's so much magic going on, and we're just making up excuses for it.
Yeah. There was a movie. What the hell was it? 1000 BC or something like that.
Is that a comedy?
That might be the comedy. There's another. I forgot the name of the movie, but this was not a comedy. It was kind of like going back to the Cro-Magnon of the first human beings.
Okay.
And they discovered, like, I guess lightning hit and it started a fire. Something Fire was the name of the movie. And it was weird. I watched the whole thing. It was just, there was no talking because a language wasn't invented yet. But they had to carry this smoldering fire because they realized when it went out, they were dead.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they didn't know how to make fire.
Oh
So
my
they're
God,
like
so that
carrying
was
this
their
thing and they're
flame.
all sitting around like making sure no one puts this fire out and stuff. And it started raining like, ooh.
Because if they lost their flame, they
Oh,
lost the
yeah.
right to eat. They
Yeah, they would have to wait for
eat.
God to do it again, like make another lightning strike, and
Mm-hmm.
and it would have been funny if someone
That
came
actually
in.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, someone came in with a book of matches.
Yeah,
Something-
right?
Yeah, something fire. I forgot the name of the freaking movie, but I just remember
That's cool.
watching it and it was just funny. I'm like, that would have been a great acting job. You don't have to memorize lines. Like,
Got nothing to
it's
memorize.
Like, ooh, you start like freaking out and stuff. And yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense. You know, you would think
Yeah.
if lightning struck and the fire appeared, oh God, if this goes out, I'm without the ability for, warmth,
Yes,
food.
so they
you
had
know?
to protect this fire, right?
And that's what we're all doing. We're kind of walking around protecting this ego,
Yeah.
Like, oh man, if this character falls apart,
we
screwed.
disappear. Well, we'll disappear.
Yeah.
We'll never return again. So if I
cease
let
to
go of my
exist.
ego, I'll cease to exist. And like the first empirical law is you exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do
Plain
about
and
that.
simple.
There's not a damn thing you can do about that. But when you think won't exist if your ego disappears, that's scary. So you have to inflate the ego and defend it, And I've defended my ego for so long, I'm just tired. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens is you start realizing, wow, this has always been me. It has always been me. I've been my own worst enemy my whole life.
Yeah, can you imagine an actor getting the role to fulfill a story about Hitler? So somebody has to play Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got this actor playing Hitler. Do you think the actor is going to defend Hitler's the way he perpetrated the world?
Absolutely
No,
not.
he's just acting as Hitler. Because now it's like you have to become Hitler, so you have to defend it. Like no, the actor realizes they're acting, and they have to do that for fulfillment of the understanding of the story in order to see how when one tries to control the outside world, and that's why World War II and Hitler is a very fascinating thing. You go to the great lengths in what he did to try to control the outside world to maybe get a glimpse of peace. I'm like, that's a maniacal way of doing it. We've understood that. So that's really what it was. It doesn't work. It never will work. It's just destructive. But the actor himself playing Hitler, it doesn't defend Hitler. They're just acting it out. And that's who we are. We don't need to defend our ego. Just act it out.
Yeah.
Let it go. And then all of a sudden you feel this nice peace inside you. It's like, I don't need to defend that.
So, Neale Donald Walsh has this great clip about fear and love, and I thought that would be a good thing for us to kind of
Live
for
life
this one.
without fear. All right.
Yeah.
That's this last one,
This
right?
is this last clip.
All right, here we go.
This is a great one.
All right.
Someone once said to me that there's a great acronym for fear. Feeling excited and ready. Oh, I love that. I had a great teacher say to me one time years ago, call your fears adventure. What a great thought. So I'd like to maybe leave you with that thought for today. Whatever you're afraid of right now, realize a couple of things. One, it's not real. You're making it all up. Two, if the thing that you're afraid would happen actually did happen, you and I would still be here tomorrow. It really would make no difference at all. Unless, of course, you wouldn't be here tomorrow, in which case it absolutely would make no difference at all. Three, if you can call your fears adventure, you'll bring in an energy that will heal the fear, the energy of excitement, the energy of being inspired by life itself. Because life, you see, is a process that informs life about life through the process of life itself. And if you live your life filled with inspiration and excitement, soon there's nothing to be afraid of. And it becomes the great joy it was always intended to be. That's how I see it. That's what my conversations with God told me about fear. I could be wrong, of course, about all of this. But I don't think so.
I like how we ended at, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think so.
I know, right?
That's what I tell my wife every day.
I could be more wrong about this,
But I don't think so.
but I don't think so. Do you even have the good music playing in the background?
Yeah.
The blockbuster music.
Yeah.
But I like that clip because
Yes.
I was like, "This is a good ending clip." It's
You know,
powerful.
I like the way he phrased it's just different. So we talk about alchemy. It's like converting, fear into love.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like saying, like, when you take fear, love all of a sudden is a healing point. I like that analogy. It's great. This is another way of looking at
It
it.
heals fear.
So when fear comes in, know that it's bringing you to a level of healing, to the umpteenth degree. And that I've noticed this in my life. When certain situations came up and they were so dire or you couldn't do anything, you just had to let go. The next time a similar situation like that came about, it didn't hit me like that.
Mm-hmm.
So know that it just doesn't continue. You go to different lengths and higher levels, just like, like if you were playing a sport, say like golf, you never go back to square one.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to readjust as you get older. Your knee gives out, so now you have to swing the club a little different. Like Tiger Woods probably had to change his swing many times in his career, but he didn't go back to square one.
Nope.
At all. The intricacy of golf is still within him. And that's the brilliance of life. Now he has to use his body differently, more subtle. And there's just some beauty in life about that. There really is. That's the brilliance of it, the brilliance of the experience. And so if we can get there sooner than later, and sooner is now, not put it off, because putting it off is an illusion. All of a sudden you realize this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. But the idea of being somewhere else is weird. Where else are you supposed to be? I thought I'd be somewhere different than here. I'm like, based on what?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a weird thing. I'm like, no, here.
I thought I would have this. I thought I would, and all we're doing is regurgitating things that were fed to us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I talk to a client, I'm like, because when they're still fighting, like trying to get something, and I just say, okay, here we're talking about, issues that you're holding on to. I says, okay, say right now we're having a conversation, and I'm like, because I always am, how you feel? Like, I feel a lot better since the conversation started like 20 minutes ago. I'm like, okay, if you knew that you had $5 million in the bank right now, would you end this call? They're like, no, not necessarily. I'm like, okay. So the money isn't going to change your life. Mm-hmm. You still, when you get that much, say you won the lottery, there would be a major distraction today. I'm not saying there wouldn't. You would. It would be a life-changing distraction. But over time, that will settle down, and anything that you were fearing is still going to be there, even if it was money. And people are like, what? I'm like, yeah. Because now you have the opportunity to lose $5 million if you won $5 million, where before you couldn't lose $5 million because you didn't have $5 million. Mm-hmm. So when you actually pull the fear closer, you realize it's not fear. It's just a misunderstanding of this message, what we call love. So ultimately, there's only one energy, love. Just like there's no such thing as darkness. There's just light, but different degrees of light. So there's a certain degree of light I need to read a book in. A certain degree of light I need to sleep in. It's just different degrees. And knowing what to do in that degree of light is what makes me live this harmonious life. But trying to read a book in the dark and trying to sleep in the bright is where our organism gets lost. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So instead of trying to fight it, go with it. But there's only light. And scientists already figured that out. They call that black black matter or dark matter, because they're in the dark about it. But yet there's still energy there. But unlike the sun coming onto the planet, which illuminates us, we could see, so our sense of sight is adequate. But when it's pitch black, our sense, well, I can actually, anyone close their eyes, they can still see visions, but you won't be able to see the four walls. But it doesn't mean it's not light. It's just not what we consider to be adequate to go through the lenses of our eyes, so the visual cortex in the back of our head can decipher what's going on. Mm-hmm. But it's still there. It's just not adequate. So, but that's okay. Doesn't need to be. Doesn't need to be.
It's funny because again, if you were to ask somebody, what is love, what we've been taught about love is still missing a lot of stuff. Most people think of love as like a romantic type of love, or with a partner, or a love that you have for like a child and a parent, or a love for whatever your favorite things in life, experiences, all that, but we don't talk about love as if it's a like a witness without judgment. Like, that's love. To be able to fully take in any type of situation and witness it and not have to judge it, label it, or say it's something. Like, that's what love actually is.
Because you can't define it. Just like, what's light? Mm-hmm. Right? What's light? Light is a candle, and it's also the sun. But there are different degrees of illumination. Mm-hmm. So trying to define love, because there is that, like, first attraction love. Mm-hmm. There is the love of, like a game. There is love for your child. But they're different degrees. But the whole entirety, empirical love, is all consuming of all that. Mm-hmm. So we experience things in degrees. But one isn't better than the other. They're just different degrees of it. There's different degrees of light. Mm-hmm. And then we realize, well, our organism at this point right now needs different degrees of light, or else, if the sun just came so close to the earth, if you stare at it, you can't see. It's like when a police officer sticks a flashlight, and it's not by experience, by the way, in your eyes, you can't see anything.
Yep.
So too much light is blinding to the organism of being a human being. So there's so many degrees of love. So the empirical truth of love is all consuming. But then we can actually express ourselves by talking about my first love I met in high school or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's real. But there's different degrees of it. And that's where we get lost in trying to define it. I'm like, you can't define it from the degree. You can only find it from the whole. But it's going back to the Tao. Once you name the Tao or label the Tao, it's no longer the Tao. So how do you define love?
Well,
how do you define
that's
God?
The paradox we're constantly always kind of
juggling.
juggling.
Because we try, and there's nothing wrong with defining, puppy love and,
of course.
Love of your child. Those are great. Those are expressions, and people can relate to that. But when you try to define the empirical understanding of love, I'm like, you can't. Our brains, we realize that, at least mine, can't conceive of that. My body can experience it, though.
Yeah, there are, like you're saying, levels to love, and there's so much to love that we just don't recognize, and we don't acknowledge, as like a society or as a culture. There's just these certain aspects of love that we don't always recognize, and that's where you become, like Frank was talking about, that alchemist.
Yeah.
And it's our job to come in and take this energy that we have misconstrued and labeled as fear, anxiety, whatever, and say, whoa, I'm misconstruing this energy. I am misidentifying this energy. And as soon as I identify something, I'm collapsing it into experience. I'm collapsing it into particle. And I'm going to experience fear. I'm going to experience anxiety. So we take this feeling that we once labeled as fear, or we once saw as anxiety or fear, and we take that energy and transmute it into love. And we find the lesson in it. We find the benefit of it. We find that silver lining. We find this is how we change the energy.
And you find that you're okay.
Always.
That's it. And
Always.
that's the brilliance of it. We get through it. And then like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I'm like, no, it's all an experience. It's just misunderstanding. But guess what? When we start to learn who we are, you have no misunderstanding. When we forget who we are, we're trying to survive, there is an idea or explanation of misunderstanding. That's appropriate in those levels.
Well, and what Neale Donald Walsh is saying here is try calling fear adventure. What's he saying? He's saying, hey, be the alchemist. Let me show you how to, transform this energy.
Yeah.
The moment you call fear adventure, the moment you call fear, just another lesson, this changes everything. This flips the whole script.
Yeah, listen. Like, why do you think, like, there was a documentary on these rock climbers, and it was in I forgot the name of the. It's not. They call it a mountain. It's not a mountain. It's a wall. It literally is a rock wall. It's in Yosemite, and these people climb it. These climbers, and I remember first seeing it. They had like lanyards and stuff like that on. But then there was one guy. First time I seen this, he climbed all the way to the top without any harness or rope.
Holy shit.
Well, what I'm getting at is we're sitting there watching it because for us it's exciting. Mm-hmm. But if I were to actually do that, it would be fear. So I've actually automatically turned fear into excitement watching an individual do that. So we're already built that way. Mm-hmm. We watch people climb Mount Everest or watch Evel Knievel try to jump over the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
It was because if I try to do that, it would be ultimate fear. But now I'm excited watching another individual express what we think is fear as they look at excitement. Because if they weren't excited, they wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. So they're teaching us that fear is just the ongoing energy of excitement. Anxiety is the ongoing energy of excitement as well. It's just holding it back. Mm-hmm. Think you can't let it go. It's just like revving a car, an engine. If you don't put it into gear and allow the energy to go through the drive shaft and into the wheels and then hit the ground moving, the engine will blow. So we have to allow that to happen, and we don't. Anxiety overcomes us. So this is why we like to watch and hear stories about Lewis and Clark and, even the story of Jesus being crucified. Mm-hmm. Because there's some excitement watching that, but if it was me, it'd be fear. I'm like, no, it isn't. You're watching yourself. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. It doesn't mean you go climb a mountain. It doesn't mean you have to go get crucified on a cross. It doesn't mean any of that. No. But you're actually witnessing fear being transmuted or translated into excitement right before your very eyes because it's the essence of who we are.
Well, and we've seen people who have had these quote-unquote near-death experiences come back and share verbatim what you were just saying, Frank, which is, hey, this experience that we're all calling real, it's not real.
Yeah, it's
like we've had multiple sources and people come back and tell us this. And remember that time we went to the church with my parents and we saw that one guy speak about his natural death experience, and just because his near-death experience involves God, the church let him speak, the one that we went to.
Oh, and
And he was literally
Corpus Christi.
Corpus Christi. Yeah. They're sharing these experiences and they're saying, hey, this is a dream, this experience we're having. There's something on the other side of this. But we don't listen to those people because we're saying, I've never died, so I don't know. But we have countless examples of people saying, no, not only did I die, but I floated above my body and witnessed what was still going on in that room. Yeah. And, and boom, back into the body. And here I am today to say, have no fear, move forward. This is an illusion. Like he said, it's not real. Neale Donald Walsch says that. It's not real. What you're experiencing, if you want to get scientific, is photons hitting your retina, etc. You're experiencing energy. It feels real. You have taste, touch, smell, all of this. But what is real? Your awareness is real. You exist is real.
Yeah, anyone that's ever experienced a VR headset, right? And now they're getting sophisticated where they'll pull in certain frequency vibrations. Or like I remember going to Disneyland years ago when they had that simulation. It was the Star Wars.
Yeah. That's
and one. The thing moved a little bit to give you that feeling, but it felt like you were moving 1,000 miles an hour, but you weren't. Mm-hmm. It's an illusion. And so that's a fractal of what we're experiencing in the outside world.
That's a great.
So it's it really is it's a fractal illusion. That's what it really is. But nonetheless, we came here within the experience of maintaining this experience to keep going. We are understood what the rules of the game are. Like if I go into a game, like to say like a video game, and it's a car game, and I keep crashing into the wall. Well, say it only allows me 10 crashes. Well, the game's over. So I'm going to do the best I can to not crash into the wall. That's part of the game. But it's not the end of me if I get put out. It's not the end of me. And over time, I can get better at it if I choose to continue in that game. So we're actually in the play. The Earth is a stage, if you will, or a hologram. And we're here to play. So that's why the seemingly rules and regulations. Yeah, football's a game, but what makes it a game is the rules and regulations. How we play the game, every coach comes in, tries to live life. That was just happenstance with Neale Donald Walsch. And actually, I've heard an interview with recently. Like they asked him if he's going to write a fourth or a fifth, and he goes, "God, I hope not," because he wants to be relieved because he doesn't want people to think he's the Messiah or his information. And what is, I think the more and more people that get this, the less books will be written, because all these books that are written are to remind us we are it. So, but we now at this point use what I call the excuse of people like Neale Donald Walsh and other people out there to get this. So we're actually, Bashar talks about this all the time. He goes, when you're talking to me, you're literally talking to yourself. I'm just here to allow you to feel comfortable about it. Otherwise, you'd feel weird. So when we stop feeling weird about talking to ourselves, which would be God, until then, he has to keep writing books.
But that is a great point and a great way to.
I heard an interview recently when he said that, and I thought that was brilliant because
Well, that's exactly we put these different teachers and individuals on pedestals, and it's like no. What the content of what they're sharing is, hey, you have everything you need, and you came equipped with it on day one.
That's it.
On moment one, you had everything. In fact, it started covering it up over your time. You weren't getting better as you thought you were. You weren't getting closer. You were getting further and further apart by thinking you needed to acquire something, acquire this knowledge. Do this, do that. There's no doing. There's nothing you have to acquire. You just exist. And when you can rest in that, then things really start to change.
Yep. Yeah, it's really true. So put the information on the pedestal, not the individuals.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like putting a speaker giving the speaker the responsibility or giving them the credit for Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, like instead of the music.
That's how you heard. You needed a speaker to hear the music. But it wasn't. It was coming through the speaker. The speaker was just an avenue in which we can hear the song.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in this week. This was a special episode for Frank and I. We truly had a great time, and we'll be back next week with someone new.
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments, you can go to perspectiveshift2020@gmail.com and just write us in. We love when people write us in with their stories and stuff. Yeah. And then you can, if you're on Spotify, you can just write comments in there. And on YouTube, you obviously click below if you want to see more content. We're going to keep doing it anyway. It doesn't matter. But, so to everyone out there, love and peace.
We'll see you next week, guys.
You got it.